Hi, I'm Philip, and I'm more of a gamer than you are. I've beaten Crysis 3 in 3D. I used to open the window when venturing through the snowy regions of Skyrim, and this is how I used to play in high resolution before I had a high resolution display. You might think I'm crazy, but let me finish. By turning a monitor on its side, it gives you the vertical definition of a much higher display. Don't take my word for it. Turn your head to one side and come on a magical journey with me through the wonders of tall screen gaming. Doesn't it make everything look so close and thick? We no longer have to imagine what's in the extremes of our peripheral, for we can now see the ground far below and the sky up above. All we have to imagine now is where the enemy might be, because we can no longer see stuff either side of us. But all that is but a small price to pay for boosted vertical clarity. I think you'll agree. And being able to view your weapons this close up will give you a renewed appreciation for the chunkiness, meatiness, and definition that a 3D render can deliver. What started as a joke for going low in CSGO became a habit of mine, and before long I found this to be my favourite way of playing competitive matches. Since then I've acquired a 4K screen, which has enabled me to have a vertical resolution equivalent to 8K gaming, and it has fueled my need for better and more powerful hardware ever since. So here I am now playing CSGO in HDR on a GeForce 4090 at a vertical resolution of 16K. What soured the experience somewhat for me is my new monitor's inability to actually turn on its side, so I've been forced to game like this instead. It's strange at first to have your mouse movements all off at 90 degrees, but I can assure you, after a match of Counter-Strike, it feels weirder returning to normal again. Almost as if we were meant to game like this all along. There was a time when our screens were almost square, and I feel deep down that it was a mistake to go widescreen. We should have gone tall screen instead. So all those times you've been playing a match of CSGO and you wonder why the hell your teammate didn't spot the enemy right next to him? You might ask, is he drunk? Is he playing one-handed? Is he distracted by something else in his room? Well, there's another option. He could have been playing like this instead. Is this really such an insane thing to do? Or is it not the rest of the world that's crazy? Makes you think. Not that it matters anymore, because CS2 no longer supports this aspect ratio, so I've had to return back to plebeian widescreen gaming instead. But it was fun while it lasted. Speaking of fun, this video's sponsor is War Thunder, a game with tall-screen gaming support and over 2,000 meticulously modelled ships, tanks, planes and helicopters, all duking it out in a massive chaotic combined arms PvP extravaganza. There's a huge amount of customization you can do to make your war machine look pretty, then click the 2 battle button and you'll be dropped in a short, action-packed match with and against other players to show off your beautiful death machines to others. I personally like the tanks because they're clearly the best type of combat vehicle. Plus, my tall screen gaming setup makes them look especially big and meaty on screen, and helps simulate the gunner's limited horizontal field of view in an authentic manner. War Thunder also sports a highly advanced and accurate destruction system which models damage to a ridiculous degree, and a damage X-ray feature to showcase exactly what damage each and every shot of yours has done to your opponent's vehicle. War Thunder is free to play on PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Check it out in this video's description. My camera has these straps which slowly undo over the course of a year or so. You'd think that would give me plenty of time to fix it before it's too late, yet sometimes it still manages to catch me unaware and will send my camera plummeting to the floor at the most inopportune moment. This is the Valley of the Rocks in the south of England. 'Tis a beautiful place, and despite the sheer drops everywhere, is surprisingly wheelchair friendly, so we booked a weekend getaway here. That same weekend, a powerful storm hit England, breaking wind speed records, tearing down trees and generally causing a bit of fuss. It made the whole place rather slippery and muddy. It was also a little bit windy. That's why this flagpole snapped. But we'd spent a good few hotel mega deal vouchers on this getaway, and we weren't simply going to let them expire at the end of the month. So you bet we did the Valley of the Rocks. And here is roughly where my camera strap failed. The camera somehow didn't go off the side of the cliff, but it did damage the lens and I spent the next 6 months struggling with focusing problems. This ruined countless potentially classic video clips that I could have recorded.
2 entire basset hounds.
Entire? Oh, you mean, yeah, I see what you mean.
So I eventually bought a new one. But this new one doesn't have such a wide field of view. Now, I didn't think much of this at the time, but it's grown to be a real problem for me. Now, those of you with a wide-angled camera on your phone will know that you don't use it that often, but when you do, it comes in very handy. And although this new camera lens of mine is only slightly less zoomed out, I find myself missing the edges of things far more often than I would have done before. What I need is a wider field of view. Now when people think of wide angle, they think of those weird distorted fisheye views, and that's kind of true once it's wide enough. I mean, all you have to do is to zoom into the middle of it a bit and it becomes normal again. And it's a whole lot easier to zoom into a wide clip like this than it is to zoom out of a zoomed in video clip. And filming in a wide field of vision has other benefits too. For a start, it can make steep looking things appear even steeper. You might actually have thought the Valley of the Rocks looked scary had I filmed that with a GoPro, but since I didn't, just have this terrifying example of how steep it can make things look instead. It also makes everything appear to move faster. I'm actually plodding through the level at a fairly standard pace, yet it looks like I'm sprinting along at the speed of light. But I'm not, and I'll demonstrate this by running across this park just here. See, same speed, but the ultra wide angled one somehow looks much cooler. I think all games would feel less slow paced if equipped with a higher field of view. View. And there's one last benefit too. If you move one way but zoom the other, then you get a lovely dolly zoom, which I know you all love because you'll comment about it every time I use it in my videos. So with this new, slightly less zoomed out lens, I'm missing out on a whole world of opportunities, and if something's a little bit too tall to fit into view, either I can do one of those nauseating panning shots like old movies used to do almost constantly, or I can revert to my tall screen roots by filming it sideways. Now don't get me wrong, I love this vertical aspect ratio. It's fine for photos, which are there to be viewed individually and for as long as you might like. But I'm a video kind of guy, and this aspect ratio is incompatible with all the other clips filmed the other way around, and I absolutely loathe black bars, so unfortunately those vertical clips have to go. And yet I still keep filming them, even though I know I'll only delete them when it comes to the editing stage. I had a wide-angled camera, a very wide-angled camera, but it unfortunately broke long ago. This is a mineshaft, a very deep one, but what does it look like down the bottom? You know that wide-angle camera that I broke? I attached it to a long piece of string and put it down this mineshaft. But I'll tell you now, you don't realise how heavy a camera, a torch and a roll of string can be until you're reeling it down a mineshaft. I was expecting it to suddenly snap at any moment. The whole thing gave me vertigo without even needing to look over the edge myself. Fun fact, Cornwall is full of mineshafts. There are detailed maps of them, running through the countryside. But there are many others that have been forgotten about until the ground opens up somewhere and swallows someone's house. They're everywhere. Some areas of Cornwall are like radioactive chunks of Swiss cheese. This is what the bottom of a mineshaft looks like. How did I get this footage, you ask? Well, I took the camera back out again, and then the camera broke some other time. I think it's quite sensible to be scared of great heights and deep pits, though I must admit my vertigo has been greatly diminished thanks to the hours I've spent in VR jumping off buildings and, well, jumping off buildings mostly. But I have a few more irrational fears as well. One of them happens to be giant flags. I mean, I'm fine filming them from a distance, they look all impressive and stuff from there, but the idea of so much material all flapping about in a breeze, I wouldn't want to be close to that. I used to have nightmares that the curtains in my room would suddenly shoot out vertically as if blown by an incredibly powerful wind. Equally, I imagine myself getting stuck halfway up a giant flag, just as a gust takes hold, sending me on a wild ride until I eventually let go and plummet to my death. Or imagine if that giant flagpole snaps, and you're one of those unfortunate people crushed underneath a giant carpet that spans out hundreds of feet in all directions. So no, you can keep your giant flagpoles. But I do like filming them. This is North Korea. They sure love their big flagpoles over there. When it comes to having the biggest flag, there's been some back and forth between North and South Korea. Every time one side builds a bigger one, the other side soon responds with an even bigger flagpole. North Korea currently has the biggest. Look, there it is, right over there, although I'm not sure where the flag is. I went down into a tunnel that connects with North Korea. Wasn't allowed to film down there, so here's some footage of Minecraft, which I must say looks a lot more interesting than that dark cave was anyway. The bit between the two Koreas has been cemented up now, but there was a little window down there that you could peer through. Though unfortunately I was unable to appreciate the experience as much as I would have liked. Firstly because it was quite cramped down there and I kept hitting my head, and second because I was sandwiched between two American groups down there who made me realise that my humour is maybe missing the mark somewhat. There might even be a few people out there who seriously believe I've been gaming vertically all this time. And this is a problem because, statistically, you watching this video are most likely to be American. And the jokes I heard these Americans cracking down there made me realise that I must come across as very unfunny to a lot of people out there. At one point they joked it would be funny if there was a cow down there because it would be like, oh my god, there's a cow down here. They cracked the same joke about hitting their head on the ceiling about a dozen times, which wasn't fair because I was doing it for real, yet every time they cracked that joke, they all laughed. It was like endless humour from the same joke. And then they went there. They joked about how smelly it would be if they farted down there and had to smell it. Needless to say, I left the group behind me a parting gift. Ah yes, the fear of the obvious fart joke. Farts are funny, we all know they are, but we're not allowed to admit it, else we appear crude. No, we have to disguise our fart jokes, hide them behind innuendo. squeeze them out quietly and subtly. Maybe even risk making ourselves the butt of those jokes. And I've thought about those Americans in those tunnels many times since. I'm not saying their jokes were funny, because obviously they weren't. They were crap. But through sheer quantity, enough of them still got a laugh that it may have all been worth it. And I look at my stuff and I realise I am so proud that I'd rather not tell a joke or make a video than to make one that I think doesn't live up to my standards. But who's to say you won't find amusement in something I consider unamusing? Do I seriously think people watch my content for its humour in the first place? Is there not a complex multitude of reasons that explains why you're watching this video at this very moment in time? So here's what I'm thinking. Maybe I should swallow my pride and do more jokes. Cover more random stuff, and not be afraid of making an ass of myself. If you watch a video of mine about processors in the hope that there might be a silly bit in it somewhere, then imagine what you'd do with a video full of silly bits. So thanks to those Americans in that tunnel near North Korea, I've decided that maybe not all fart jokes need to be so incredibly dry. Maybe with added risk could come extra reward in some weird way I cannot yet foresee. And that's really what this video is, a risk. I'm not saying it's a slapstick fart joke, but it is me daring something different. To group a bunch of topics and video ideas together that I don't think hit the mark. But here I'm not worrying about how it will land, or how the video will end, or even how it might transition to the next part smoothly. Something that terrifies me is to have a large open space behind me when I'm climbing something steep. The knowledge that if I was just to fall back, nothing would stop me from dying. So because of that, one of the scariest things I've ever climbed is this, which is annoying because it doesn't look like much, it's just a big pile of slate. But going up there was the second scariest thing I've ever done. The scariest was getting back down again, doing everything I could to stop myself from beginning to slide forward, knowing that if that happened, I'd be unable to stop myself again. What I would have given for a cow to break my fall. It might even have farted, ha 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 ha. And here we are, the end of the video. Normally I have an overarching theme to wrap everything up with, but there's none of that here. Just a bunch of unrelated things I've been blabbering about. And as fun as all this has been, it seems I've neglected the conclusion. Kind of like a Black Mirror episode. Is this going to disappoint you watching this? Do you watch a video for the journey, or do you expect some kind of punchline at the end that can somehow tie everything together? I got lucky this time. I proudly present to you some Facing Worlds with the Chaos UT mod installed. But if that game's older than you are and you want something else, then I suggest checking out this video's sponsor, War Thunder. Sign up using the link in this video's description to get a large bonus pack of vehicles and stuff. Then get stuck into a game with over 100 years worth of war machines, dating all the way back to the 1920s. War Thunder is free to play and available on PC, Xbox and PlayStation.